transformed, equipped, empowered to engage your world. It's the gathering of stars and queens.
Birthed from an open vision on 23rd February 1990 around 5 a.m., Pastor Dr. Esther Obasi-ike received a commission to impact women on a global level at her home in Gombe, Bauchi State.
That early morning, I was having my devotion as usual, waking up early in the morning, and all of a sudden, I began to see things like a movie. And because it came very unusually, I quickly took my Bible. I had a Bible, King James Version, that I was using for my devotion. I quickly took it and put by the side. The vision came in a movie short playlet, and the Lord showed me a group of women that were so impoverished, and they were Africans. I could recognize that these were Africans. You could actually count their bones as you looked at them, and I knew these people were suffering from abject poverty. Within few seconds, the second scene came, and they were widows. Real live vision with my eyes wide open. And they put their hands on their jaws, and they were looking up to heaven. And in that vision, I heard them say something: "Vindicators of our adversaries." And that one actually confirmed to me that these were widows. Another group of women came into play, third scene. And in that third scene, there were beautiful women, sophisticated women, women that you could look at and you know that these were well-off women. They were well-to-do. All of a sudden, the Lord opened their hearts, and I saw them. They were like whited sepulchre, full of dead men's bones. They were women that on the outside, they looked comfortable, but the inside showed a broken human beings. They were broken, they were, bitter, confused, frustrated, miserable, and if I can borrow the modern term, depressed. And a voice came, but that voice came as an inner voice, not an audible voice. For this purpose, you were born. Go and minister to those women. I quickly wrote in this Bible what I have described right now. That's how I remember that it was on 23rd February 1990.
And from humble beginnings at her home in KMA Estate, South Sea, this chosen woman of God began her ministry, ministering to women every Friday. She imparted God's living word in them.
I landed here in January 1996. My husband landed in Kenya in October 1995. Precisely in March, I felt this urge to start women's ministry. And I began gathering women, and I started teaching them the book of Nehemiah, specifically how to rebuild your broken lives.
I met Dr. Esther Obasi-ike when I was introduced by a friend whom we used to go to gym together. That was far back 1996. She invited me for a meeting which she was having in South Sea. I found her teaching the word of God in the book of Ruth. The way she taught, I've never heard. I was brought up in a Christian family. I was brought up in the church, and I used to teach even Sunday school, teach even the youth. But the way she brought the word of God was different. So I stayed for 1 hour. And I never left until from that day up to now.
The Lord blessed the work of her hands, and the ministry went from growth to growth, increasing in leaps and bounds from her house in Keme Estate to social halls to filling the iconic Nyayo Stadium.
But where it seems is the end for you can only be the beginning if you have faith in God.
And finally hosting the movement at RCCG Solutions Center, Mbagathi Way.
I began to see women that were depressed, women that had very, serious marital issues, but the rate of suicide was very high. People would walk into my office and say, Pastor Esther, I can't handle this problem again. I want to commit suicide. You think it is a joke? Few days later, you hear they've died of suicide. So it was within that time when I was now asking myself, what's going on here? With all those stories, that the Lord spoke to me to name this movement Queen Esthers Generation. So I began to ask God, why Queen Esthers Generation? Why not any other name? Because my name is Esther. I didn't want anything to associate with my name. Least people may think, it is just your movement. The Lord said it has got nothing to do now with your name. However, I want you to recognize that Queen Esther in the Bible Esther ascended to the throne through submission, worship, and prayers and favor. Quietly with no noise, quietly without fighting anybody, she found herself there, finished the enemies of God quietly. And the Lord began to speak to me. She was an orphan, she was a slave lady and a captive and a foreigner. And the Lord told me, some of the women that were coming to see me that time had slavery mentality. And the Lord told me, you can liberate these women so that they can begin to have understanding of their self-worth, their values, and begin to know that they can actually be a tool for social transformation. And so I named the organization Queen Esthers Generation, not after my name, but after the whole group of women that were struggling with identity crisis and mentality problem, and of course impoverished background, and sometimes also social stigmatization. And so I began now to study the book of Esther. I was studying the book of Esther like I was eating food. And that's why I can close my eyes and preach about Queen Esther without looking anywhere. Because I began to appreciate the level of life, the quality of life that woman lived, and how God raised her up in a foreign land and used her to preserve the eternal agenda of God. God told me, even you, Esther, as a foreigner, I'm going to use you that same way. I'll grant you a lot of favor in the land. I'll grant you a lot of breakthroughs in the land. It may not be easy the way it was not easy with Queen Esther. You saw Haman and their group. But I will preserve you and preserve my destiny because I have raised you to do what I've asked you to do. Then the Lord reminded me, the vision of 23rd February 1990, this is now the time for implementation. It made sense. It now made sense. I could connect the dots, and I now decided to sign up for this worthy cause to live for women. I now decided I will suffer for them. I will go to any extent. This meeting, even if I find one or two women, I will sit with them and God will change their life.